Not your keys, not your coins. Okay, if I were forced to only give one piece of advice for anyone interested in Bitcoin or cryptocurrencies, whether you invest in it or not, whether you learn it or teach it or are in the space or not, it would be this. If you don't have possession of your Bitcoin wallet's private key, then you do not actually own Bitcoin. Put simpler, not your keys, not your coins, which probably maybe it didn't put Andreas Antonopoulos on the map, but it was one of the biggest phrases that he's known for. Not your keys, not your coins. If you don't have physical digital possession of the private key for your Bitcoin wallet, then you do not actually have your Bitcoins. When your Bitcoin are on an exchange, they're subject to what happens to the exchange. I've had Bitcoin on multiple exchanges that I had to remove or else I would lose them. MTGOX, Cryptsy, Livecoin, Binance, those four just to name a couple. And while I recommend and personally use Coinbase, there's still a risk of something happening to Coinbase and losing everything that you have on there. Over the years, as I've taught and coached people with Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, I've shared this same advice to them, and some followed it, and some didn't. And it makes me sad, but it also frustrates me because I told people that, and they didn't listen or they forgot. Bitcoin is not just another investment asset. You have to be vigilant, proactive, and on top of it at all times. The reason you have to be more on top of it and vigilant is because at its core, what you have with Bitcoin is more valuable than, let's just say, even a checking account. Because a checking account is insured by the FDIC up to $250,000. But if 100,000 people all try to go to the bank at the same time, all want their money back, some of them are going to be left behind. Bitcoin, if you actually have it, like let's just say like cash under the mattress or gold in the ground, it's more valuable in that way than your checking account. You see what I mean? That's why if you have possession of this, there's only so many of them, and by its inherent nature of how it was designed and created and even runs, it's just like having cash, digital cash. The reason you don't have possession of Bitcoin if it's on an exchange is because of one of the technologies that undergirds Bitcoin, public key cryptography. We talked about this a little bit in the Making Bitcoin Easy section. So if we were to take a step back, how do you know that the dollars that you have in your bank account are really there? Not a joke, I'm being serious. How do you know that they're really there? You know because you deposited something and then you saw it there, which is part of it, whether it was a cash or a check from your employer. But your bank has to verify the authenticity of what you give them. They're never going to rely on your word that it's real or legitimate. They're going to verify the cash you're handing over isn't counterfeit, or they'll verify the check that you deposited and institution or bank the money is drawn from has the funds to cover the check. If it's unable to verify, the bank will not process the transaction. That's one of the reasons it takes several days for checks to clear. Bitcoin works the same way, okay? If that may come as a surprise to you, it was designed specifically not to rely on humans alone or humans plus an institution or institutional trust. It uses public key cryptography. So when someone sends you one Bitcoin, the transaction appears on the blockchain or the ledger actually after it's gone on the network. The person who sends you the coins has to digitally prove that they own them. And they prove that by signing the transactions using their private key. With public and private key cryptography, there's a private key which allows you to create addresses, and only the person who has the private key can send anything. They're the only person that can sign that transaction. It's based on math and science and cryptography. Again, I talk about this in my Making Bitcoin Easy section. If you want to go back and watch that, or if you haven't been there yet, go straight there. I talk about it. So what do you do with this information? Why does it matter? What can you do now or even in the future if you want to get into Bitcoin, or you already are? Well, here's how I handled it. Here's how I handled it then, and why I handled it that way. When I first bought my original Bitcoin in 2013, I almost immediately transferred it to a paper wallet because it was on a computer, and if that computer crashed, I'd lose it. I didn't know that enough. I knew well enough that was true. I knew that. So I kept the majority of all my Bitcoin on paper wallets over the years until hardware wallets came out, which they weren't at that time. So I only used paper wallets, especially as I had to quickly remove cryptocurrency from exchanges if I sensed something bad was going to happen, or the exchange started getting bad press, or there are rumors of investigations. The only time I moved my crypto onto an exchange, my Bitcoin, was if I was going to sell or trade it, and not before, if it was maybe where I had my recurring purchases. But bear in mind, I was dealing with Bitcoin that was worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. So had it only been $100 or maybe $1,000, I may not have had to do this. But to be safe, I did. And I kept having to do the safest things because it was worth a lot of money. But it was so stressful and it was hard. Nobody was teaching me how to do it. I had to do it on my own. Fortunately, today, for you, there are really good products like Trezor, what I have, and Ledger, also what I have. And I'm looking more into Casa. I think that looks to be a viable solution. That these things have been around for several years, and there's people like me and others who can teach you more about it. The best practice, and I go over best practices in a future section, but the best practice is to keep offline whatever Bitcoin you're not actively using in either a paper or a hardware wallet until it's time to actually sell it or trade it. They call this a cold wallet, one that's offline and not frequently used. And they call the wallet you have on exchange a hot wallet because it's hot, it's live, it's active, and you're using it somewhat frequently, so the thinking goes. And I talk more about that in a later section as well, hot and cold wallets. Now, there's some exceptions to this. So if you're not investing a lot, maybe $100, does it really make sense to go through all the work with either with either a paper or hardware wallet? Probably not. I don't know if I would have done that if I had $100 and then spent $200 to $500 on a hardware wallet. I probably would just leave $100 on an exchange. And I think that's the majority of how people think now. So that's up to you. Maybe you're fine with that risk if it's $100. Maybe if it's $1,000, then you'll invest in a hardware wallet. If it were me and it were more than a couple $1,000s, I would take it offline and put it in a paper or hardware wallet. Unfortunately, setting up a paper or hardware wallet, it's a little tricky. Paper wallet is a little harder than a hardware wallet now. It takes time and proactive participation, but your Bitcoin and those keys are much more secure. The trade-off is if you kept your Bitcoin on exchanges, it's riskier and less secure in case anything happens to the exchange. Okay, I dedicated this entire section, even though it was short, because it's that important. And I've come very close to losing substantial Bitcoin holdings this way. And I know some people who personally lost all of their Bitcoin this way. If you don't have physical, digital, when I say physical, it could be on a hardware wallet or printed out on a paper or online or through a hardware wallet that's expressed through online, which is a hardware wallet. If you don't have that private key, then you don't have possession of your cryptocurrency. Not your keys, not your coins. Not your keys, not your coins. Okay, the next section is going to be the most common questions. Okay, hopefully that was helpful and you keep hearing my echoing in your head, not your keys, not your coins, not your keys, not your coins, not your keys, not your coins, because it's that important. If you want to get involved with Bitcoin or any cryptocurrencies, remember that. And even though I didn't lose Bitcoin, I have lost other altcoins because of that related. I'll talk more about that in my failures. It wasn't, well, I'll tell you more, you'll hear about it. Anyway, the next section is most common questions. Okay, so these are the most common questions I've heard over the years that I continue to hear even now this year. People, friends, and family calling me up and they ask me these questions. So that's what's going to be next.